I'm 51 years old, and I thought I had a pretty decent relationship with my son's fiancée. Until last week, when I caught her in a situation that made my blood run cold. My son Lucas is 28, and recently got engaged to a woman named Marissa. They've been together about 3 years now, and while I've never been her biggest fan, I've tried to keep my distance and let them figure things out on their own. Lucas is smart, kind, and grounded, but he also has a blind spot for people he loves. And Marissa? She knows how to use that. From the beginning, there were little things, like how she always acted different around different people. Sweet and doting when Lucas was around. Cold and clipped when she didn't think anyone was watching. She always asked pointed questions about our family's finances, like how much Lucas would inherit, what kind of life insurance I carried, or whether Lucas was on the deed to our family cabin up north. I didn't love it, but I chalked it up to curiosity. But last weekend, things crossed a line I can't ignore. My wife and I were out of town for a few days visiting my sister, and we'd asked Lucas to house sit, water the plants, bring in the mail, that sort of thing. Marissa tagged along, which wasn't a problem. I didn't think much of it. They'd stayed at our house a few times before. No big deal. I even left them a bottle of wine and a little welcome note. We came back a day early because my sister's kid came out with a stomach bug, and we didn't want to get stuck helping clean up puke, so we packed up and drove back, thinking we'd surprise them with breakfast the next morning. But when we walked in through the garage door around 11 p.m., the house was dark and unusually. That's when I heard movement in the basement. At first, I thought it was Lucas. I was about to call out his name, but something made me stop. I stood at the top of the stairs and just listened. Whoever it was down there was moving around slowly, deliberately. No talking, no music, just the sound of things being shifted, drawers being opened, then the sharp clink of metal against metal. I quietly made my way down and turned the corner into my office. The room was lit only by the dim glow of a desk lamp, and standing there, frozen like a deer in headlights, was Marissa. She wasn't just in the office. She had my safe open. Let me repeat that. She had somehow gotten into my locked safe, and she was digging through it like she belonged there. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, watching her. She didn't notice me right away. She was holding a small box I hadn't touched in over a decade, one that contained a stack of old letters, a few trinkets from my late brother, and something else that I hadn't looked at since before Lucas was born. That was when she finally, and the look on her face was not fear. It wasn't guilt. It was calculation, like she was trying to figure out how to spin it, and that was the moment this wasn't some innocent mistake. She wasn't looking for money. She was looking for something else. Marissa didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. She didn't even look surprised to see me. Instead, she calmly placed the box back inside the safe and closed it like she was putting away laundry. Then she looked me dead in the eye and said, "I didn't think you'd be back so soon." That alone told me to know. She wasn't panicking. She hadn't expected to get caught. She'd planned for it to be gone. I walked further into the room, keeping my voice low, not wanting to wake Lucas if he was upstairs. I asked her "How did you get the cut?" She didn't answer right away. She just looked at me for a long second, then gave a soft shrug. We were talking. I asked again, firmer this time. She said she'd seen me open it once a few months ago. The pattern. I wanted to laugh at how ridiculous that sounded. The safe's keypad doesn't show the numbers I press, just stars. It's an old model, sure, but there's no way she could have memorized the code just by watching over my shoulder. She hadn't guessed it. She'd been snooping for a while. And what was worse, she knew I knew. I told her to sit down, and she did. Still calm, still acting like I was overreacting. She said she was just curious about what we kept in the safe, and that she was hoping to find some old photos or mementos of Lucas as a baby for their wedding slideshow. I didn't buy it for a second. I knew exactly what was inside that safe. Old paperwork, personal letters, a few valuables, and one particular file I hadn't looked at in over 20 years. A file that had nothing to do with Lucas, and everything to do with someone I'd never wanted him, or anyone, to know about. And Marissa had been holding that exact file in her hands. There was no way it was an accident. The only reason she would have gone digging for was if she knew it existed, which meant someone had told her, or she'd found out something she was never supposed to know. And suddenly, all those questions she used to ask, about the family money, about life insurance, about things that didn't concern her, they all made sense. She wasn't digging for memories, she was digging for leverage. I didn't confront her right away, not directly. Instead, I told her to go upstairs and wake Lucas. I wanted him to know what I'd walked into, but she refused. Said he was asleep, and that there was no need to drag him into a misunderstanding. That's when I told her, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a line, and she'd crossed it. She looked at me, completely unfazed, and said, "Then maybe we should talk about what you're really hiding in that safe." And just like that, the entire power dynamic room shifted. The moment those words left her mouth, my stomach dropped. I hadn't heard them, not those exact words, in over 20 years. And hearing them now, from Marissa of all people, made my skin crawl. She was talking about her, about a name that hadn't been said in my house since before Lucas was born. I didn't respond. I didn't move. I just stared at her, and she smiled. Not a big grin, but a quiet, satisfied little smirk. The kind of smile you only give when you know you've just hit a nerve. Then she asked me, flat out, "Does Lucas know he has a sister?" That's when my knees nearly gave out. I hadn't told anyone about her. Not Lucas, not my wife, not even my own parents. It was something I buried decades ago. Back when I was still in college, I was in a relationship that ended badly, and I found out a few months later that she was pregnant. We tried to make it work for a while, but it was a disaster. Toxic, manipulative, controlling. I was 22, and in no shape to be a father. She told me she was putting the baby up for adoption. Then she disappeared. Years later, I found out that wasn't true. She'd kept the baby. A daughter. By the time I tracked her down, the damage was done. She wanted nothing to do with me, and I was told, point blank, to stay away. It destroyed me, but I respected it. I moved on. I built a new life, got married, had Lucas, and never looked back. That part of my past stayed locked away. Until now. I never even told Lucas he had a half-sibling. It felt wrong. Unfair to open a door that couldn't lead anywhere good. And now Marissa, my son's fiancée, was standing in my basement, casually bringing it up like she'd just asked about dinner plans. I finally asked her, "How do you know about this?" She didn't answer, just said, "It's amazing what you can find out when people don't protect their old secrets." And that was all I needed to hear. She had been digging, not just in my safe, but into my past, my private life, my worst memories. The things I'd worked hard to forget, all being used like pawns in some twisted game I didn't even know I was playing. I told her to leave, immediately, but she didn't budge. She said she'd leave when she was ready, and not before we had a real conversation about what Lucas deserves to know. And that's when I realized she wasn't just digging for dirt. She was threatening me. She stood there like she owned the place, like she hadn't just broken into my safe, uncovered my biggest secret, and dangled it in front of me like bait. I asked her again to leave, more forcefully this time, but she only tilted her head and said, "You really think I'd go through all this trouble just to walk away now?" That was the moment I realized I'd underestimated her. Marissa wasn't some careless fiancé snooping for gossip. She was playing a long game, and I had no idea how long she'd been playing it. I took a deep breath and asked the one question I was dreading. "What do you want?" She didn't hesitate. She said she wanted Lucas to be added to the family trust, not just as a future beneficiary, but immediately. She wanted access to the family cabin, ownership, in writing, and she wanted a significant amount of money moved into a joint account before the wedding. I stood there in silence, trying to keep my heart from hammering out of my chest. It wasn't about Lucas. It never had been. It was about control, about money, about power, and now she was using something deeply personal, something Lucas had never even heard of, to corner me. I reminded her coldly that Lucas and I talk every day, that we're close, that this kind of manipulation wouldn't work, but her response chilled me. She said she'd already tested the waters, dropped hints, brought up what-if scenarios, asked him how he'd feel if I was hiding something big. She claimed he'd laughed it off, said he trusted me more than anyone. But then she smiled again, that same smug, calculated smirk, and she said, "Everyone has a tipping point, even Lucas." I didn't say anything. I couldn't, because I knew what she was doing, and worse, I knew it might work. If she told him about the daughter I never claimed, if she spun it the right way, it could look like betrayal, like I'd built our family on lies. And even if it wasn't true, even if Lucas eventually came around, it would crack the trust we'd spent decades building. She knew exactly where to stab. She gave me a deadline. 1 week. I was to talk to my lawyer, make the changes and give her proof, or she'd share what she found. With Lucas, with my wife, with anyone who'd listen. Then she walked out of my office like she hadn't just held my whole world hostage. After she left, I just sat there in the dark, staring at the closed safe like it might offer an explanation. My hands were shaking. I couldn't tell if it was rage or fear, probably both. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even go upstairs. I just stayed in the basement, going over every interaction I'd ever had with Marissa, trying to figure out when she started pulling threads. Because this wasn't random. She'd come into my life with a purpose, and now that I looked back, I could see it. Every little question she asked, every moment she tried to charm her way into family affairs, every quiet observation, she'd been studying us. By morning, my thoughts had settled into one ugly conclusion. Marissa had planned this from the beginning. She didn't fall in love with Lucas. She targeted him. That's what made this even more horrifying. Lucas didn't know. He was in love with her. He was planning a wedding with her. And while I was sitting in a basement surrounded by old regrets and betrayal, he was probably still asleep, upstairs, dreaming of a future with someone who saw him as a stepping stone. The next day, I drove to my lawyer's office. Not to change the trust, not to sign anything over, but to prepare for war. I didn't tell him everything, just enough. That someone had obtained sensitive information from my past and was now attempting to use it for financial leverage. My lawyer asked if I had proof, and I said not yet. He warned me, accusations without evidence wouldn't hold much water. If I went to Lucas with this, and she denied it, there was a real chance I'd come out looking like the paranoid father who didn't want to let go. That made my stomach turn. Marissa was smart. She hadn't texted me, hadn't emailed, no voicemails, no physical threats. Just a conversation in the shadows, and a smile that said checkmate. And if I told Lucas without evidence, I risked losing him, not just temporarily, but permanently. My lawyer's advice was clear. Stall. Don't provoke her. Act like you're considering it. Buy time. Gather proof. So I went home, deleted the camera footage from the night before. At least the parts she might have been caught in. I didn't want her to know I had security backups she hadn't found. That would come later. For now, I had to play the part of the man she thought she had under her thumb, and I had to do it while pretending nothing was wrong. That night, Lucas called. He and Marissa had gone out to dinner. He was happy, excited, told me he was thinking of moving the wedding date up, and I just sat there on the phone, nodding along, while the woman sitting across from him at that dinner table was planning to rip our family apart from the inside. By the time Friday rolled around, I had barely eaten or slept. I was living in this strange purgatory, pretending everything was fine while every nerve in my body was screaming. Marissa texted me that afternoon, just 5 words. Have you made a decision? Greeting. Like we were discussing a business deal, not the destruction of my family. I didn't respond right away. I needed to keep up the act. My lawyer had advised me to stall and observe, so that's what I did. I replied hours later, something vague and uncommittal, just enough to let her know I was considering it. She sent back a thumbs-up emoji, as if we were sharing a joke. I felt sick. That night, I decided to start looking through the digital logs from the house. What Marissa didn't know was that I had recently upgraded the Wi-Fi router, and it logged every device that connected, every phone, every laptop, even smartwatches. Marissa had connected her phone to our network multiple times before. Nothing unusual, but something strange popped up from the week before. A second one with a spoofed name and hidden MAC address. Not registered to anything. It had connected late at night 3 different times, while Lucas and Marissa were staying over. I checked the timestamps. They lined up exactly with the times we'd left them in the house alone. It matched the day I noticed the safe combination was acting. At the time, I figured it was just old wiring. Wasn't so sure. I took a screenshot of the log and saved it. Then I went to the security footage, what was left of it anyway. I had made a stupid mistake and assumed the main feed would be enough, but the backup system had a separate motion detection protocol I hadn't checked yet. There, at 2:14 a.m. on a Tuesday night, was emotional in the basement hallway. The camera didn't catch the safe room, but you could see the light on the office door. It flicked on for exactly 18 minutes, then off in the hallway. A blurry reflection of Marissa, holding her phone flashlight up to the keypad. She had been trying to crack the... That confirmed everything. She hadn't just stumbled across something by chance. She'd planned this, tried multiple times, and was probably using a burner phone. The pieces were into place, but I still didn't know how she knew about the file in the first place. I didn't tell anyone. The only paper trail existed inside that safe. My wife had never seen it. Lucas had never even heard of that chapter of my life. So unless she was psychic, someone had given her that information, and that someone had to be connected to my past. I couldn't shake it. Someone had fed Marissa that secret. The file she found in the safe wasn't labeled. There were no names on the front. Nothing about it would have stood out to someone just snooping for money or jewelry. She had gone looking for something specific, and she'd known exactly where to find it. That meant this wasn't just greed. This was personal. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I dug through an old storage box in the attic, one I hadn't touched since we moved into this house. Inside were a dozen manila folders filled with old letters, contact sheets, even some half-torn photos. It was everything I'd kept from before I became a husband and a father. Most of it was junk, but one name kept coming up again and again. Claire. Claire was the mother of the daughter I never raised. We hadn't spoken since she told me to stay out of their lives. I Googled her, not expecting much. The last time I checked, she'd changed her last name and moved across the country. But this time, she came up instantly. There was a business listing, some small boutique in Arizona. Her profile picture was recent, and beside her, a younger woman, about Lucas's age. I clicked. I zoomed, and my heart stopped. It was Marissa. Different hair, different last name, but same face. That's when everything snapped into place. She wasn't some random girl Lucas met by chance. She wasn't a gold digger. She was my daughter's half-sister. She had known exactly who Lucas was from the beginning. This wasn't about money. This wasn't even about revenge. This was a mission, and God help me, I still didn't know what the endgame was. My head was spinning. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even sit down. I just paced the living room floor, trying to wrap my brain around what I'd found. Marissa wasn't just Lucas's fiancée. She was the half-sister of a woman he didn't even know existed, which meant she and Lucas were technically unrelated. But biologically, they were deeply entangled in the same hidden family history I'd buried decades ago, and she knew. That's what haunted me most. She knew everything, and still pursued my son. I didn't sleep that night. Every thought led to another question. Had she told Lucas anything? Had she lied to him about her background? Had she orchestrated their relationship from the start? The next morning, I sent my lawyer everything. The screenshots, the router logs, the motion alert. I told him about Claire, about the daughter, about Marissa's connection. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. If she knows she's related to your son in any way and didn't disclose it, this could go from morally disgusting to legally complicated very quickly. He told me to tread carefully. This wasn't just some blackmail threat anymore. It could turn into a public scandal, a legal mess, a nightmare. I hung up and sat in my truck for almost an hour, trying to decide what to do. I couldn't tell my wife. Not yet. She adored Marissa. She was already halfway through helping plan the wedding, picking flowers and tasting cake samples. And Lucas? How do you even begin a conversation like, "Hey, son, your fiancé is possibly your half-sister's half-sister, and might be blackmailing me because of a secret child I never told you about." There's no easy way to say that. No gentle version. But doing nothing was no longer an option. So I drove straight to Lucas's apartment. He wasn't home, but Marissa was. She opened the door with a fake smile, like nothing had happened, wearing one of Lucas's sweatshirts, holding a cup of coffee like she hadn't detonated a bomb under my entire life. I didn't say a word, just held up my phone and showed her the photo, the one from Claire's business profile. Her face went pale, and for the first time since this began, I saw it. Fear. The look on her face was everything I needed. That moment of fear, the flicker of panic, the way her lips parted like she'd forgotten how to breathe. It told me I was right. She hadn't expected me to find Claire. She thought the past was too far gone, too buried. But now it was clawing its way out, and I was done playing nice. Still, she tried to recover. She crossed her arms, leaned against the doorframe, and said, "So what? That doesn't change anything." I told her it changed everything, that this wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was calculated deception. She knew about Lucas. She knew about me. She'd walked into our lives under false pretenses, built a relationship on a lie, and now she was standing in my son's apartment like she belonged here. And that's when she said it. "He deserves to know the truth. If you're not going to tell him, I will." The air left my lungs. That wasn't a threat. That was a promise. She wasn't just bluffing anymore. She was ready to burn everything down, and she was going to do it using my own blood. I asked her one final question. Why? Her answer? Because Claire wanted closure. According to Marissa, her mother had always told her bits and pieces. Enough to know I existed, that I had another child, that I moved on, and pretended none of it happened. She'd grown up hearing about the man who abandoned her sister, and now she wanted justice. Or maybe revenge, or maybe just to hurt me the way she thought I hurt them. Claire had never moved on, and now she'd sent her daughter to finish the job. I stood there trying to process that this entire engagement, this whole relationship, had started as a quiet act of vengeance. But it had gone too far, because now Lucas was in love. He was planning a life with. He trusted her. He had no idea the woman he wanted to marry had once referred to him as a target. I looked her in the eyes and said exactly what I knew would shake her. "You don't get to decide what kind of man I am to my son. Not after this." And then I told her, if she went through with this, if she told Lucas, then she should be ready to lose everything. Not just him, but her mother's reputation, her own. The truth wouldn't just destroy me. It would scorch everyone. She didn't respond. She just stood there, and I walked away, leaving the silence behind me like a warning shot. I didn't know if she'd go through with it, but I knew one thing. I had one last move to make. The next morning, I did what I should have done from the beginning. I told Lucas everything. Not the polished, safe version. Not the edited story I'd rehearsed 100 times. The truth. We sat on the back deck, the sun not even fully up yet, and I told him about Claire, about the daughter he never knew existed, about how young and scared I was back then, about the silence that followed for 2 decades. I told him how Marissa wasn't just some stranger who fell into his life. She was connected to that silence, woven into the part of me I'd spent years trying to forget. And then I showed him the photo. Claire, Marissa, smiling together. He stared at it for a long time. Too long. I thought he was going to throw something, scream, walk away, but all he said was, "So that's why she always asked about the cabin, and the trust, and you." That hit me like a punch in the gut. He knew. Not everything, but enough to feel the cracks. He just hadn't put the pieces together. I asked if he still wanted to marry her. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I think she loved the lie more than she ever loved me." That afternoon, he ended it. Marissa didn't beg. She didn't cry. She just packed up her things and left without a word. No drama, no final monologue, like someone who'd already accepted the ending long before the rest of us saw it coming. Lucas asked me one thing afterward. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" And I told him the truth again, because I was ashamed, because it felt too late. Because I didn't know how to explain something that never stopped hurting. He didn't forgive me right away. I didn't expect him to, but for the first time since this nightmare began, the air between us felt honest, clean. Update. 2 weeks later. Marissa hasn't contacted us again. Claire hasn't either. I assume they know it's over. Lucas is quiet. He moved back in temporarily to get his head right. My wife knows everything now, too. That was another hard conversation, but she handled it better than I deserved. And me? I've reopened the file. The one I kept hidden in the safe for all those years. I'm writing a letter to the daughter I never met. Not because I expect forgiveness, but because I'm done hiding. If this entire mess taught me anything, it's that secrets don't stay buried forever. Eventually, they find a way to surface, and when they do, you either let them drown you, or you learn how to swim. I'm trying to swim, one honest word at a time.